Unidentified flying object left marks in the rural area of Antonina in Paraná, right after the intro. Hello everyone, I'm Edison Boaventura. Welcome to our channel. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe quickly. And if you like this video, later leave your like and your comments, because it's very important so that we can improve our work here in investigation and research. Recently, we took part in the 4th Mato Grosso Congress of Paralytic Ufology. And there we met with Inajar Antonio Kurowski. And while talking with us there, he shared some stories and we interviewed him, but one case caught our attention. It's the case of his mother, who lived on a farm in the rural area of Antonina. And one night in the early morning, around 1 o'clock, she was living there. She observed it, a very interesting phenomenon that he tells us about in Inajar. He even gave lectures there in Barra do Garças in Mato Grosso at this event that we also attended. So it was a really cool event organized by Ataide Ferreira, and I recommend it. Next year, there will probably be the 5th edition of this Congress, and it's really worth attending. Well, besides the cases that Inajar is going to talk about, in which he was the main character, there's also this case about his mother. It supposedly happened on April 25, 2003 in the area of the São João neighborhood in Antonina at a place called Sítio Feliz, which is in the rural zone. His mother's name is Ligia Muraro, and besides witnessing this phenomenon, she also noticed that the next day there were 9 turkeys and 3 geese dead there, which had been killed without any apparent cause. They couldn't identify the case. We're going to share this interview with you about this case, which was investigated by CPEX. What is CPEX? It's the Center for Exobiological Research and Investigation, which is a research center in Paraná. Another interesting thing worth mentioning here is that the Antonina Moretes region, that area there, has a high incidence. So, without further ado, let's watch this interesting interview. We are here in Cuiabá, Mato Grosso. We took part in an event in Barra do Garças, the 4th Congress of Ufology for Psychology of Mato Grosso. And I'm here with my friend Inajar Antonio Kurowski. That's how you say it, right? That's how you say it. And he's going to tell us about some cases, right? Yesterday, when we were coming back from Barra do Garças, we sat down to talk for a bit. He talked about some cases where he and his family were involved. I found it really interesting, and I'm going to share it with you. So, tell us how those sighting experiences were.
I'll try to put them in chronological order. So, when I was around 23 to 25 years old, somewhere around there, and I was leaving my grandfather's property. I had to cross the street to get to our property. It was all a rural area, all with small farms around there. Which city? That was in Curitiba, in the west zone of the city. That was 40 years ago, so that area was still very rural back then. And it was close to the end of the afternoon when I spotted an object. It looked like 2 coins, one on top of the other, and around the space between the 2 coins there were lights side by side. This object was spinning very slowly. I saw it appear coming from east to west. It passed in front of me at approximately 150 meters away, and at a height that I estimate to be around 50 to 100 meters more or less. This sighting lasted about 20 minutes. I kept watching until it disappeared on the horizon. That was my first sighting. Then Fruti, Deram, and me, Zanotto, We had a property in Antonina. At that property, we used to get together to spend the street carnival of Antonina, which is a very lively carnival. And on one of those occasions, I was with my wife and my daughter on the pier here in Antonina. It's a port at the back of Paranagua Bay. So I was on a pier on a floating dock, and I was describing the sky to my daughter, the stars, constellations, and so on. Suddenly, I looked at the star and said, "That star is floating." It was a star in a southern position from where we were, which would be over the city. Curious, I left the pier and stepped onto solid ground, and I was able to determine that the star was actually around. Maybe at most, about 60 meters, between 30 and 60 meters above the main street of the city where this street carnival was taking place. It was
Fine.
low, very low. I was able to estimate a diameter between 50 centimeters and 1 meter, which, at that distance, is a bit hard to pinpoint. And it's an amber light, that characteristic light of orbiting probes. And also, this sighting lasted almost half an hour, and then it started blinking. It went out. Wow, it was over. Suddenly, it blinked again and lit up, stayed on for another 3 to 5 minutes, blinked again, went out, and then didn't come back. So I think the probe was watching what those crazy people were doing there.
Have you ever seen the phenomenon during the day?
The people say it's really strong. Once, while climbing the mountain, I had already climbed the mountain near Curitiba. It's almost a straight line from the top of the mountain all the way to the city. And I was tired, so I asked my wife to drive. And there's a stretch where we get close to San Jose dos Pinhais Airport. Well, close as in, it's several kilometers, so it's common to see airplanes. I was tired, so I leaned my head against the car's center pillar and kept looking at the sky. Then I saw one plane, then another. Suddenly, I noticed a circular object that was brown in color. That's a balloon. It's a balloon that's really high up. That's a little tornado. 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I kept looking at that balloon. Wow, that's curious, that balloon. It must be big, with a large diameter. Then I saw a plane approaching, a commercial plane, a long-haul flight. And I said, wow, that plane is really high up because the plane looks really small. Then the plane kept coming. When it got close to the object, it passed way below the object, and you could see the difference in size. If that object were to be side by side with the other, it would be at least 3 or 4 times the size of the plane. That's not even taking into account the distance between them.
And the shape of that object?
Round. It's this shape, similar to this one we have here, but it was very big and brown in color. That's it.
Right. Do you recall the year?
That was 2004, I think. A third event that would have happened. No, that's already the fourth. The fourth event that would have happened. My mother lived in that place I mentioned, there in Antonina, alone. There was the caretaker who lived there. His house was about 200 meters away. It was a pretty big property. And in front of the house, there was a big lawn, a property. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do one. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do something. We launch, and the launch ends in auto. And one night, my mother called me. It was around 11 p.m. She was very excited. She said it landed. I asked, what happened? She said, I was watching television. There was interference. The whole screen got fuzzy. It was still the time of tube TVs. And the whole house lit up, as if all the lights were on, but stronger, much stronger. She got up to see what was happening and realized that this light was coming from outside. She opened the curtain, looked out the window, and saw the ship landed. No,
Backyard?
in the backyard, about 50 meters, no more than 60 meters from the house door. She went out, opened the door, went out, and started walking toward the object. It lit up and took off, flying over her and over the house.
And it was big. It was big too. My mother
described that it was about the size of a big Carmengia, those
old cars like the Carmangia, right?
So what did I understand? That the way she saw it, it would have a bit of a dome on top to be similar. It's just that...
the Carmangia has that dome on top?
So it would have this approximate shape. I said, well, it's already gone, so there's no point in me going there now, leaving Curitiba at 11 p.m. and going down the mountain, right? I said, I'll be there early tomorrow, and at 3 in the morning, she calls me again from outside, saying it landed again, it landed again. I asked, how was it? She said it was the same way. The television stopped. She was still awake. Of course, she was overwhelmed.
Poita, right? Exactly.
By the sighting. And it was the same way. The house lit up. She went outside. She wanted to get close to the object, and it also took off and flew over her. I got there in the morning,
She was in the backyard when the object flew over her, passed above the house and left.
It's like it was keeping her from getting closer. It took off quickly. It ran away from her, so to speak. Then, early in the morning, I went there. I left Curitiba really early. At 7 in the morning, I was already there.
Was there any mark, any trace left? Yes, there was.
The marks from the landing gear, both from the first landing at certain points, 3 landing gear marks about 1 meter apart, and again 3 marks there.
He landed those 2 times, almost in the same place. Yes.
Yes.
Only with a difference of...
about 1 meter apart from each other.
What was there? Juices on the ground?
On the ground, I even expected the grass to be a bit more affected, but it wasn't just affected. More, right on the footings themselves. The grass had an appearance that I called cooked. It had no chlorophyll where the footings were, and it was moist. It wasn't burned. They were dechlorophyllated. I removed the grass to see the soil underneath, and the mark was rectangular and had the same appearance as the sole of a kick-shoot shoe, with those marks of claws, right? Claws like soccer cleats, right? And I called out. I contacted Curitiba ufologists Jackson Camargo and Carlos Machado. They visited and confirmed what happened. Curiously, I thought it would burn the grass right there. And in the end, the grass stayed. It was hyperstimulated. It grew more there. It became...
super
fertilized. So it grew more than the grass around it, right underneath where the 2 wells were.
And after that incident, was there any other case there at the farm where she saw something?
There at the farm, no. But then I had already had that sighting in the city. But this one? And my mother, talking to the neighbors since she was friends with them, saying that this is very common, not just the landing, but also the sighting of beings, right? Including abduction cases. Jackson Camargo did more intense research there. He has quite a few cases recorded about this in the region.
Recorded there with testimonies from the witnesses.
No first-hand witnesses.
So, this landing case, do you remember the year, the date, 2005?
The date was around this time we're in now, June or July.
So now for Inajar, what are they?
Oh, they are many things. There are a multitude of origins and an even greater multitude of forms, right? So let's say there are intraterrestrials, there are interdimensionals, there are ultradimensionals, there are 3D beings like us, there are beings that vibrate at a slightly higher frequency. So we can't access them directly, but they can adjust and lower their frequency so we can make contact. So they're the extraterrestrials, right? Who come from other planets, not just from our solar system, but from other systems and even from other galaxies. But when we look at Mars, for example, we only see deserts. That's because they're on a different frequency range. I've even said that before, right? Think of everything as energy, frequency, and vibration.
So Inajar wanted to thank Iva for sharing this information and these cases, right? And also, he's also part of Unidentified Flying Object magazine. That's right, isn't it? I'd like you to leave a message for our subscribers.
Make it a habit to look at the sky. People who live in the city have lost that habit, haven't they? Even if they look, the city's bright lights and numerous buildings make it hard to see. These are situations that obstruct the view. But people are used to going to a park or a larger square and looking at the sky. For sure, you'll see something.
That's it then. Keep supporting our work and see you in the next video podcast live with Edison Boaventura. Thanks.
Take care. See ya.